So, what are some questions that couples should be asking themselves about their finances? We're going to give you 4 distinct questions to ask your significant other because, unfortunately, as we all know, finances can be a source of friction among couples and in relationships. So we're going to give you some questions for you to ponder along with some key takeaways on that. And then, I don't know about you, but cash apps, whether it's Venmo or for that matter, even store applications that are on your phone are becoming more and more popular. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls of using those and some of the things you may want to keep in mind when you use those. So all of that is coming up on this week's episode of Dollars and Cents, where we help you make sense out of all of life's decisions involving your dollars. One of Central Florida's longest running radio programs, coming to you on a host of stations throughout the Central Florida region. My name, of course, is Joel Garris, certified financial planner, certified financial fiduciary. Joining me on this week's program, Zach Keister. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here. Third show, so
very good.
Ready to roll.
Excellent. For those of you who follow the program regularly, you know that Zach is one of our newer certified financial fiduciaries on the team at Nelson Financial Planning, and as always, ready to help in any way you can.
Absolutely. Happy to assist any way I can.
Excellent. Another busy week. Speaking of the office, another busy week at the office. We had night 2 of our client appreciation event this past week at the Orlando Science Center.
Yeah, very interesting. A lot of very interesting exhibits between the dinosaur bones and then the space section. And they also have a very neat weather forecasting area as well, where you can go and pretend to be a weather announcer.
That is good stuff. So if you haven't been to the Orlando Science Center of late, definitely want to check that out as well. One of those old jewels here in Central Florida. And certainly an event that we do every year with our clients. We actually spread it out over a couple of different nights to kind of not have too big of a crowd. But at the end of the day, just our way of saying to our clients how much we appreciate them. So this is an event that we've been doing for many, many years now. Used to do it in sort of the May time frame. Nowadays, we do it in the October time frame, which, crazy enough, as we were saying before we came on air, the air date for this particular show, October 27th, which means that October's just about done.
Just about done. Halloween right around the corner. The end of the year is near.
It will rapidly accelerate from here on out. Now, Zach, is Halloween one of those holidays that you kind of get into? Are you kind of the guy that dresses up and all of that? Or what's Halloween mean to you?
I do enjoy Halloween. I enjoy passing out the candy. Word of advice, though, try not to buy your candy too early because I have found myself every year snacking on it. I go a couple weeks early, get the big boxes from Costco or Sam's Club, and then I'm like, well, let's try these out. Let's make sure that these Reese cups are really still good for the kids.
That is very true. You know, it's funny, when my kids would come home with big bags of candy, after they had gone to bed, I would sometimes go through and pick out the things that I was
that's known as the dad tax. Have you heard of the dad tax? That's the dad tax.
I was taxing them heavily depending upon what was in those bags, that's for sure. And then, of course, the really scary event is the following week, right?
What could that possibly be? I don't know.
Yes, we have the election then the following week. So that means that next week on the program, in all seriousness, next week's episode is really going to be all about elections, the implications, what may or may not happen. In fact, next week on the program, we're going to go so far as to go out on a proverbial limb and make a presidential election prediction. So you want to be sure to not miss that coming up on next week's show. Now, this week marks an important week, I guess, in the calendar, right? So this week is the 3rd week of October, which makes it a special week, I guess.
Correct. This is National Estate Planning Awareness Week, which is every 3rd week, every October, every year. Here's a shocking statistic for you, Joel. It's estimated that 150 million Americans do not have up-to-date estate planning documents.
Wow, that is just unbelievable, and that almost is the majority. You know, I think the important thing for folks to realize on that, Zach, is that the reality is that rules change, things change, right? There's different court cases that come into play, and oftentimes what courts decide might change how certain documents are written. So beyond what might be happening sort of in the legislative branch that impacts your estate planning, there's also the judicial branch that also kind of has an impact on that, and they're obviously making decisions every day about cases, and so that's why it's so important to really every few years you gotta take a look at those documents.
Yeah, dust off the box and see what you got. 4 of those important documents being a power of attorney, healthcare surrogate, living will/will, and potentially a trust as well.
Yeah, no, that's sort of the whole Denny's menu, if you will, of the types of documents that you can have, Zach. And so it's important for folks to know sort of the differences between those as well, right? So you've got your power of attorney, which we typically see in the office when folks become incapacitated and others want to be able to act on their behalf. So that's number one, power of attorney. And then a living will is sort of kind of that end of life thing where we're talking about maybe not being kept alive by machines and the like. The healthcare surrogate is sort of a version of a power of attorney that is designed for health-related matters. And then the will, of course, is just saying, hey, here's who's getting what, if you will. So those are the 4 main documents. And then to your point, Zach, the optional one is a trust.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then I think you did a recent episode on those as well, didn't you?
We did, yeah. Some of the key questions to ask before you even kind of get to that point where you're drafting documents is there's some things that you want to make sure that you are figuring out to see exactly how all of that might actually wind up playing out in terms of what those documents actually say. So the trust, for example, Zach, that's one of the ones that a lot requires much more of a conversation. I'm in particular thinking of an appointment that we had just this past week, just talking through that process of what that ultimately looks like, because after all, that's what a trust is. It really sets the parameters of that.
Yeah, and also the expense as well.
Right.
is typically much higher with a trust and certain implications within the trust. That's kind of really the lengthy multi-page document that says here go this is what goes here, this is what goes there, this is how I want this done.
Well, and the point of that is that you're trying to set up guardrails, you're trying to provide some parameters, but I don't want our audience to take this the wrong way, but it is always amazing how often, I guess there's the expression, humans plan and God laughs. You go through this process and, life's got a way of kind of throwing curveballs, even when it comes to the trust or the estate plan that you might be creating.
Yeah, and one other thing that a lot of folks don't think about is that's just on paper. That's just black and white on paper. It does not take into account the emotional impact that having a trust does and implementing your trust, after the fact.
No question. Yeah, there's certainly a lot of emotions that can come with that because you're talking about money and you're talking about family, and that can sometimes be a pretty tough combination to try and navigate that. But anyway, National Estate Planning Awareness Week. If it has been more than a few years since you actually looked at your estate planning documents, we would encourage you this weekend to go ahead and pull them out of the file cabinet, pull them out of the box, wherever you might have stuffed them, and sit down and kind of read through them and maybe reach back out to the attorney that drafted those documents and talk to them about making sure that all of your documents are up to date based on the current law. With that, we're going to take a break here on Dollars and Cents. So, are you and your significant other on the same page financially? It's no surprise when you look at the various studies that mention that 40% of couples fight about money issues on a weekly basis. That just sounds like that's a major problem, Zach.
That sounds like a major problem, Joel. And you and I have seen this in person when couples have come in to visit with us, sit down, review their documents, and they're kind of scrambling and they're not on the same page together, and that creates a lot of tension.
It does. It does make our days interesting when that happens. And so in this segment, and to help you avoid said conversation, we're going to give you 4 distinct questions to reflect on with your significant other to really help to put these money issues into perspective as a couple. So welcome on into the program. This, of course, is Dollars and Cents, where we help you make sense out of all of life's decisions involving your dollars. One of Central Florida's longest running radio programs, also coming to you as a top 25 financial planning podcast as well. So make sure you check us out on your favorite podcast platform or even our YouTube channel. To find any of those, just search for us under Nelson Financial Planning or Dollars and Cents, or you can go to our website at nelsonfinancialplanning.com to see the icons that will immediately get you connected to the various platforms. My name, of course, is Joel Garris, certified financial planner, certified financial fiduciary at Nelson Financial Planning. Joining me this week, Zach Keister, also a certified financial fiduciary and a member of the team at Nelson Financial Planning. So, one of the biggest issues, Zach, that we see with couples is when it comes to their money is just that lack of I guess overall communication about what exactly is going on with their finances
and overall situational awareness as a couple. It's like there's this kind of this unspoken agreement, Joel, that's like, well, I'm the financial spouse, or they are the financial significant other. I have nothing. Talk to them. I don't have a clue what's going on. And when you look at that historically, that's typically men. Right. That operate the finance role. But the big problem with that is when you look at that statistically, and we don't tend to hang around as long as the women do.
Very true. The actual tables frown on us relative to women. So that's an excellent point, Zach, is that when we think about that, and men typically that sort of that financial spouse being all of those financial duties falling in that particular court, what really happens, and we certainly see this a lot in the office, is when he passes away, then she is left with trying to do something that she's never really done at all during the course of her life, and certainly leads to some pretty heartbreaking moments and some scrambles during a period of time where people are pretty emotional as it is.
Yeah, it's already an emotional hill. You're dealing with the loss of your spouse, and then you have to try and figure out the financial situation of which you've not been a part of. So it's really just piles on a lot of confusion and questions and worry and all those sort of things.
So then what are some of those questions then that people need to be asking themselves to help get on better footing, particularly as a couple when it comes to these money issues, if you will?
4 questions we're going to chat about today. The first one being, do we talk enough about our money? Second question being, do we have a designated person if something were to happen to either or both of us? Third question is, are we keeping good financial records? And then finally, are we on the same page with our investment risk?
Yeah, great question. So we're going to break down each of those in a little bit more detail. So let's talk about that first one. Do we talk enough about our money? Let's get into that a little bit.
Yeah, we see that communication is a major portion of that. Being on the same page is saying, hey, are we on the same page about finances?
Yeah, and certainly that is probably true for other things beyond finances as well, to have a good working relationship.
Communication, number one within the relationship.
Many things require that. That is for sure. And certainly when you sit down and talk about money and think about those goals, right? I mean, all of that becomes a conversation about what do you want to achieve in life? What does that look like? What does retirement look like? Do you want to travel? Do you want to stay home? All of those types of things all come into that conversation.
And that's another thing to chat about as well, the big purchases.
Yeah.
Are we buying a home? Are we planning on traveling? Do we want to buy an RV? Are we going to stay, where we are right now? We're going to move to a different state. There's a myriad of questions that come into play that you really need to have a discussion about in regards to your finances with your significant other.
And I would certainly also add you need to be having these conversations regularly, right?
Absolutely.
These are not one and done conversations because life changes, and frankly, what you want out of life also changes along the way. So the importance of making sure that you are talking a lot about money and some of the financial choices and financial decisions that you face as a couple.
Yeah, on a personal basis in my life, this is done on a monthly basis.
Okay.
We sit down, we designate a specific time. Now it changes. Sometimes it's mid-month, sometimes it's later in the month. But we sit down, my girlfriend and I sit down together and we have dinner. You got to make it fun is the hard part. You can't just break out the computer and the spreadsheets. You got to do it over, dinner. You go out to dinner and you review all your documents together and say, okay, are we still on plan for our 3-year goals, our 5-year goals, our 10-year goals when it comes to our finances and where we want to be in general? Are we in the location we want to be at that point? Are we still wanting to stay in the same area, the same state? What's our family planning look like? That sort of stuff.
Wow. Well, that's I mean, I would kid you that doesn't sound overly romantic, but at the end of the day, if you're on the same page financially with your significant other, that is a great way to have a good connection and good romance in that relationship. So good on you, Zach.
We're still young. We're still young, so we're early on.
All right. Well, then the flame's still burning bright. That's very good. We will shift away from that romantic advice to question number 2 in terms of what couples need to ask for. So what's question number 2?
So question number 2 is, do we have a designated person to handle our finances if something happens to either one of us or both of us? That's very important to have an outside person to come into play and kind of be there for if something happens to one of you, and especially if something happens to both of you.
Yeah, I mean, the classic example of this, Zach, is the Terry Schiavo case from Florida several decades ago, where there was some lack of clarity as to who was able to make decisions and who wasn't. And it wound up being a very, I think almost like a 6 or 7 year court battle between her parents and her husband trying to decide exactly what Terry would have wanted in her case when she fell ill. I think it was a brain aneurysm or something like that. So a good example, particularly here in Florida, where folks really need to understand and to talk about that. Yeah. And then at the same point in time, I guess it's good to have some type of a financial overview document that you guys are preparing together as a couple, because having all of that information in one location that makes a lot of sense.
Nice and easy with the bullet points tend to work really well, kind of a graph of if this then that, yes, no, that sort of thing tends to work out pretty well. And like you said, you want that to be in a readily available location, whether that's in a specific filing document or, hey, it's 2024. Maybe it might be in the cloud.
There you go. That's right. And what's surprising is few people do that. And what we're talking about is a financial document that has not just sort of the name of the account and where it's at, but like the account numbers, passwords, all of that in a single document, so that you don't have to kind of go engage in this sort of Easter egg hunt, if you will, if anything happens to one of you.
Sure, absolutely. And it's vital to put either a phone number or an email address of who you need to contact as well. That way you can go directly to the source, directly to one person. Put the account number on there. Here's who you need to talk to. They're at this location. They're at this business. Just to really make it, easy for your significant other, because think about it, they're going to be dealing with a lot of emotions in that point. So you're really going to make it easy for them to say, here's the one-page document of where you need to go.
Well, and I think universally that's probably true of anybody.
Sure.
Whether you're in a relationship, not in a relationship, it doesn't matter. That single financial document that has that information on it is truly pretty valuable. So anyway, we're going to take a break here on Dollars and Cents with Joel Garris and Zach Keister of Nelson Financial Planning. So talking a little bit about some of the questions that couples need to be asking each other to make sure that finances doesn't become a source of frustration and problems that it does for many couples. Before the break, Zach, we kind of went over the first two, which just to reset the stage for our audience, those first two questions that couples need to be asking themselves.
Yeah, first two questions we covered were, do we talk enough about our money? And do we have a designated person for if something were to happen to either one of us?
Which gets us to the third question that we think is important for couples to discuss. And this one, we were talking about it the other day, and as we were prepping for the show, this is almost like a no-win question. The question about, are you on the same page when it comes to investment risk?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lose-lose, if you will, if you're not. Because one of you will always be happy for a little while, and then the other one will always be happy. So it depends on which side of the ball you're on, but you will never be happy together.
That is very true, because then if you've got one partner that thinks, yes, I want to take as much risk as possible, and when things are going well, then that person is getting rewarded, and the other person feels kind of silly. But then, things don't go up all the time, and then when that reversal happens, well, then the person that was more conservative all the way along feels vindicated. And when you run into that can create friction in any relationship.
Absolutely. And one of you will be petrified at one point or the other. One of you, the one that is more of a risk taker is at certain times going to think, I'm on top of the world, everything is great, while the other one is thinking, oh no, Chicken Little, the world is falling, the world is ending, and then it might be a reverse. So, like you mentioned, things don't always go up. So in that period, the other person that is more on a less risky side might feel a little bit more safe, but then the more risk taker is like, what's going on? What's happening here?
Well, and it's okay because, we don't expect two people in a couple to be exactly the same. It's okay to have a difference in that perspective, but to make sure that you've discussed it and to adjust the portfolio to maybe have that balance that really helps with both of those people in terms of how they view investment risk.
Absolutely, yeah. You just absolutely have to be on the same page. Now, like you mentioned, you could individually maybe be interested in a little bit more risk than your significant other, but talk about that. Be on the same page and say, well, I'm a little bit more of a risk taker than you are, but we talked about it and we're going to come to a conclusion together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then lastly, there's a fourth question before we get to our key takeaways here.
Yeah, the next question is, are we keeping good financial records and good records in general in that case? So it's a big thing to think about. We've seen it all, really, haven't we? When it comes to how people organize their records, some folks do this crazy alphabetical box. Some folks utilize the cloud. Some folks utilize the space in their garage where it's just box upon box from years and years of all these different records. But whichever route that you choose, make sure you have a route.
Correct.
It doesn't necessarily matter one way or the other, as long as you are comfortable and you feel that you can get to the documents that you need to very easily.
And in line with sort of what we're talking about, make sure that you have had that conversation with your significant other so they understand the system that is being used and where they can go to for finding that. So we got some practical tips to sort of end this part of the conversation, Zach, on what people can do to help with these financial discussions. So what are some of the things that we've come up with to sort of help folks engage in these conversations about their finances?
So the first practical tip that we've come up with is schedule regular check-ins. We were chatting about that earlier. Check in with your significant other about your financial situation, whatever you might decide, maybe on a monthly basis, maybe you do it on a quarterly basis, but definitely try and keep it as recent as you possibly can and make it as fun as you can, because unlike you and I, a lot of folks don't love looking at Excel spreadsheets
Correct.
and what have you, financial matters at all points. So try and make it fun. Try and make a little bit of a game out of it. Go out to dinner. Try and jazz it up a little bit if you can.
No, absolutely. That's a good suggestion. And then I think the other practical tip that we would have as well is to make sure you're using all the available tools and resources that are out there. There's a lot of applications. There's a lot of ways in which you can keep track of this information. Budgeting apps, spreadsheets, all of that. Even our book, Next Gen Dollars and Cents, has some QR codes in it that will link you directly over to a downloadable spreadsheet that you can use to really help get your finances in order. And speaking of our book, we're actually running an offer between now and the end of the year for the holidays to get your free copy of our book, Next Gen Dollars and Cents. So to do that, just visit our website at nelsonfinancialplanning.com or give us a call at the office, 407-629-6477. The book retails for $14.99 on Amazon, but you can get it for free just during the holidays. And my goodness, not a bad gift.
Quite the stocking stuffer.
Yes, there you go. The keys to financial success. I'm sure you've got somebody in your life that could possibly use a copy of that book. And then lastly, Zach, just another key takeaway on some tips for couples as they work through their finances.
Yeah, the last one being open and honest with your significant other when you're discussing these items, because what's the point in having this discussion if you're not being truthful? So be truthful about all those things we talked about, where you are as far as investment risk, where you are in that realm, how you feel about your overall finances, how you feel about maybe some of the decisions you're making. So if you and your significant other are deciding to move or you're planning on buying a house, discuss your feelings about that. Talk about how that makes you feel. Are you worried? Are you excited? That sort of stuff is really important to chat through.
No, it certainly is, and all of that is certainly good to be open and honest. You don't want to necessarily have a credit card on the side that you're racking up a big balance on, because that's going to create problems in the relationship. So open and honesty, and all of that is also good relationship advice as well. So we didn't mean to steer into that territory here on Dollars and Cents, but it looks like we have, because, well, money's a big part of everything.
Money is a big part of everybody's situation, relationship. Even if you're single, it's still a very large part of your life. So
that's very true. Very true indeed. And speaking of money, Zach, the popularity of these cash apps and these store apps, and for that matter, even gift cards remain quite popular as well, particularly as we approach the holidays. More and more people are using these, and you really might want to be careful about those as a consumer, because they're not perhaps as cracked up as people think they are. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely not. Definitely in the ease of use area, that's where they shine.
Right.
But we'll get into a couple of different items here, but the ease of use is definitely the number one factor of why I think a lot of people utilize them. But particularly when we get into the gift card section, we'll chat about some crazy statistics
Yeah, even I was surprised about the statistics on gift cards. But what we're talking about, sort of three different categories. So you've got the kind of the pure cash apps, which would be like your Venmo. And then you've got your store apps, like your Starbucks app. When you want to order coffee real quick, you go to the app and voila. And then that third category is gift cards. And certainly there's transaction volume among these cash apps. That's sort of that first category has really increased dramatically over the past few years.
Yeah, it has. I don't. Do you personally use those? I use Venmo here and there a little bit.
I use Venmo here and there. Because I guess that's the world that we live in as well. Zelle is a different one, but Zelle is not a pure cash app. So we'll kind of draw that distinction and pick up right there when we return from these messages here on Dollars and Cents with Joel Garris and Zach Keister of Nelson Financial Planning. So on the program, we're talking a little bit about the huge increase of these cash apps, things like Venmo. And Zach, just before the break, we were talking a little bit about contrasting Venmo versus like a Zelle. So a Zelle is a platform through which you can send money that is part of your bank account. Bank of America uses Zelle, things like that. Whereby Venmo is you're literally storing money, you're storing cash in that particular application.
Yeah, absolutely. I would be curious to know if Zelle extends the FDIC insurance or not. If that is part of that, I would be curious to research that piece. But that definitely doesn't come into play with the Venmo types, does it? It
does not, and I think that's one of the lessons that people need to realize is that these cash apps are very, very different. These are not banks, so there's no FDIC limit. There's certainly no interest earned as that money is sitting there, and for the most part, these just sort of hold your cash and effectively earn profit from it, and you don't, and so that's the limitation. And the volume of transactions on these has really increased dramatically when you start to look at the statistics.
Yeah, absolutely. So the statistics on that currently floating at 900 billion with a B. And by 2027, so 5 years, expected to be at $1.6 trillion.
Almost doubling in the space of a 5-year period of time in terms of the amount of dollars that are floating around courtesy of these these cash apps. And then when we think about the store apps, and we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, which is what made it a part of this program. Some of these store apps, and don't necessarily want to pick on Starbucks. That's one that I utilize pretty regularly, so it's fresh on my mind. And they have a minimum amount that you can reload that app at, and that minimum amount is like $25.
Yeah, absolutely. And so as a business, you love that idea because you're going to load money onto my specific app, of which you can only buy things from my store with. So it's a pretty great business plan.
And when the minimum load is $25, it really starts to add up, right? I mean, you did some research on this, and it's a crazy amount of cash that if we just, again, not to pick on Starbucks, but we use that specific example, a lot of money.
Yeah, definitely a lot of money in there, and a lot of it, and again, we'll talk about it with the gift cards, gets forgotten as well.
Sure. But I want to say that the report on Starbucks alone had that they hold about $1.6 billion in cash that is not used, that is just sitting there as a result of the minimum reload on these apps. That's a tremendous amount of money that Starbucks is holding.
Yeah, not to pick on Starbucks solely, but that was just kind of fresh in both of our minds. The Bank of Starbucks is what we coined it.
A lot of money's just sitting there. And gift cards, the same thing. Gift cards, the statistics are just really unbelievable. And particularly as we think about getting into the holidays, where many people will say, hey, we use gift cards as as a holiday gift, if you will, but the stats on these are even worse.
Yeah, absolutely. absolutely. So the numbers on that within the gift cards is $23 billion. So that means an average of $187 per person. And I would be curious to see how many folks around the country have a junk drawer full of random gift cards. And you and I were chatting about some of these places are no longer even in business, so you can't even utilize the gift card anymore.
Yeah, so in those junk drawers, they estimate that figure is $23 billion in unused gift cards, which works out to that average of about $200 per person. That is just, when I saw that statistic, it's amazing. Talk about poor use of money.
Absolutely. Yeah, when it comes to holiday gift giving, we understand the gift card is typically a very easy way out, particularly, if you're going for many people, a gift card easy way, one-stop shop. If a person likes a specific store, easy gift. But you might as well, we talked about this too, you might as well take a $50 bill and say Merry Christmas or whatever the holiday occasion might be and just light it on fire in front of them. That's
the problem when we think about gift cards because, that's a lot. It just goes in the junk drawer, to your point, Zach, and it adds up to a tremendous amount of money. So I guess bottom line, be careful with this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely want to be careful. Easy to lose track of them. Like you mentioned, they always end up, not always, but a lot of times they end up in the junk drawer. It is a good gesture still, especially when you think of this specific person. Oh, they love this store. They like Starbucks in particular. I'm going to get them a Starbucks gift card, but hopefully it gets utilized and doesn't end up with the random glue and nails and hammer, whatever ends up in the junk drawer.
Well, and I think that's kind of the point is when we think about these, particularly like the cash apps, okay, be careful about how much money you're storing on those cash apps. It's not FDIC insured. You're not earning any interest, okay? As it relates to the store apps, don't overload those. When you think about the amount of cash that is sitting at Starbucks, courtesy of the minimum reload, it's $1.6 billion. These are just staggering amounts of money. And then with those gift cards, I guess, Zach, the advice is don't just throw them in the junk drawer.
Absolutely not. Maybe have hey, go back to what we were talking about earlier. Maybe stick them in your box with your financial documents, or make a designated gift card box. That's a good idea. I've got one of those at home. That's just a little small box that has all these random gift cards that I've gotten. So luckily I haven't fallen into the statistic yet.
So when you go out on your financial date night,
there you go, full circle.
You can use one of those gift cards, and then you are able to have that financial discussion as a couple and not actually have to pay for dinner because you got the gift card. So all in all, everything is tied neatly together here on this week's episode.
Yeah, that's a big win to use your gift cards, and then you're talking about all of your financial situations with your significant other, and you catch a free dinner at that.
And the bottom line is, you have to be smart with your money. And believe me, I understand in today's world, super convenient. These Venmos, these cash apps, everybody's using them. They're easy to use if you're out with friends and shooting money kind of back and forth. But the reality is there's always a cost to those decisions. They don't exist just for free, right? Every one of these is a profit-making company, and you have to understand that. And when that happens, then that means you're not getting the value out of your dollars that you could be.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing to kind of think of on that is what happens when you get a new phone. Not every time everything gets reloaded. So if you're using a Venmo or something like that, you could have money just floating out in the middle of nowhere and not even know it.
Just totally forget that, particularly on some of these store apps, and particularly when some of these stores go out of business. That is for sure. So anyway, some important things to be thinking about as it relates to your money, particularly with the holidays coming up, and a lot of people will get some gift cards, I am sure. more as part of that. So make sure you're aware of that. Also, as we talked about at the beginning of the show, this week is National Estate Planning Awareness Week, right? So you got what was that statistic from earlier? A lot of folks don't have a very
150 million.
150
Estimated
million.
150 million Americans do not have up-to-date estate documents.
So important to really take those out, dust those off, pull those out of the file cabinet, retrieve them from the cloud, take them out of the shoebox, whatever your system is, and really take a look at that. Also had an interesting conversation on the program about some of the questions that couples need to be asking themselves as well to make sure that they are on the right financial footing.
Absolutely. And to just quickly recap all four of those, the four questions are: do we talk enough about our money? Do we have a designated person to handle our finances if something were to happen to either one of us? Are we on the same page about investment risk? And are we keeping good financial records?
All good questions to be asking yourselves, whether you're single or whether you're in a relationship as well. So with that, we're going to wrap it on up and get on out of here. Thank you for listening to the program. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Dollars and Cents. If you have any questions about anything that we've talked about on the show, or you'd like to suggest your own topic for a future episode, feel free to reach out to us at nelsonfinancialplanning.com or give us a call at the office 407-629-6477. All of our consultations are done absolutely free of charge. So we look forward to seeing how we might be able to help you at Nelson Financial Planning.